This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Welcome to Life Mastery with Todd Allen, the talk radio show that dives into the science of higher consciousness. Join Todd and his guests weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific Time and learn how to live a peaceful life with intentional mastery. Enjoy a survey of inspiring topics such as abundance, intention, health, manifestation, love, and transformation. It's all right here. Leading authors, speakers, coaches, entrepreneurs with stories and messages to support your well-being, let alone your most evocative dreams.
Hey, it's another groovy day, and most of you know, but I'll tell you anyway. It's because that's the way I make it. When I wake up in the morning, before my feet hit the ground, I decide it's going to be a groovy day, and it's pre-programmed. Now, things can happen, things might change, something else might come along. I might realize that I'm an hour ahead of schedule and have to redo everything, but I can always turn it around and make it groovy again and keep right on trucking. So that's the way you do it. And there's just a little inside joke there with our guest today. She was an hour behind or an hour ahead, either way. We're here. And we're here with Jackie Bailey. You know what, Jackie? I can't believe we need to fix that intro. Cam's our engineer. It's life.
Yeah, how long have I been your co-host now? I think it's been like 3 years, right? I think it's been 3 years.
And it still says Life Mastery Radio with Todd Allen and Jackie Bailey. Hi, Jackie. Welcome to the show.
Oh. Well, you know what? I want to tell you, Todd, that in the 3 years since I have been co-hosting with you, that I now get that I wake up and I make it a great day idea. Because it's taken me a long time to get the point where I know that I have control over my thoughts, and we've had so many wonderful guests who have validated that mindset, that way of thinking. And you knew it a long time ago, but I'm grateful to you for allowing me, having the patience to allow me to figure this out and get to the point where, yep, I realize now.
Could you have ever imagined? I know you and we were on the stage together in different venues and talking about things, and I think you had made the comment, I always thought Todd was a little woo-woo, but right.
Yeah,
and then
you were a little woo-woo from my perspective.
Right. So would you have ever imagined that it would have transformed like this? I mean, I've watched you grow immensely, and it's just like I'm waiting for that phone call from your husband, Arnie. Todd, you would just it's a total transformation. No, I'm just kidding. But.
Well, I think the key for me is the open mind. You know, I came into this knowing you're a little woo-woo, and I listened to many episodes of your show, and I knew that your guests could be a little bit out there as well from my perspective at the time. But going into this with an open mind and just listening and realizing that there's common ground with everyone. And if we can just start with the common ground and then have an open mind to consider that there's truth in what everybody is saying, there's some truth in what everybody is saying, then that's when the growth happens, right? But if you just are stuck in your thinking and go, well, this is the way it is because this is what I know, there's no growth. There's no room for growth. So,
I read something really interesting this morning, and I'll paraphrase it because I don't remember it totally, but I know the idea. I may not agree with you, but I will stand on the highest hill and protect your right to be able to believe what you want to believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I forget who said that, but it was total revelation. I mean, it's like, that's what I believe. And that's what I think our founding fathers believed as well. And we all need to adopt that somehow, some way. Like I always say too, we don't get to know how we don't want to be until we get there. And
that's right.
We've gone through this evolution, and I think people are beginning to realize, whoa, wait a minute, we need to beep back this truck up a little bit.
Well, you and I are involved in Toastmasters too, and Toastmasters has been a great area of learning a different way of giving feedback to people, because when we're taught how to listen to a speech or a presentation objectively and to not be judgmental about the message itself, but
Content, right?
yeah, but to give them ideas about how they might deliver that better or more impactfully. And that's been a great area of growth for me, because I hear a lot of speeches where I go, I don't believe anything like that, or I vehemently disagree with something that's being said, but that's not my job. My job is to say, if you want your message to be even more impactful, or you want to deliver it with more strength, here's some things you could do. And it's not about whether I believe it or not. It's helping them to be stronger.
You know, there's another direction too. And I heard we have a wonderful guest on for you today, and we'll bring her on in just a minute. But I listened to some of her podcasts this morning, and she said something else that sums that up. And it's when you listen to people and you allow them to grow, there are chemical releases that are occurring in the brain that are happy stuff, right? And so that's what Toastmasters for me is all about, is helping people, because when you help people, that's when you get this chemical boost. And maybe we can talk a little bit more about that with our guest today. I do want to remind our listeners that today's show page is at www.lifemasteryradio.net or .com, whichever one you prefer. And you can go there. Any links that we talk about with our guest today, there's a show page there, and it will take you to wherever we talk about that. You should go and check it out. There, that was a mouthful. While you're there, you can also check out Jackie and I's book. They're both of them are up there. There's Jackie's book, Self-Centered Leadership, and of course, my book, 6 Keys to Life Mastery, and some tips and tricks. I've been giving this book out again. Well, I've always given it out, but I heard from a young person the other day, and she just looked at me. She says, I love it. And I thought, wow, go to Amazon and say that too.
Yeah, that's where it all counts, right?
What else today? Oh, while you're on the website, sign up for the newsletter. Jackie creates a newsletter every week. It highlights who's been on the show, who's coming on the show, and she always writes a blog post about the wonderful show that we just did. This is the highlight of my week, and I'm sure it is hers too. We get to rub elbows with some inspiring, cutting edge, on the leading edge of their own becoming, and it's pretty cool to go along on that ride. So sign up for that newsletter. That's all we use that email address for, is to let you know about the show. Okay, Jackie, did I forget anything? I think that's it.
I don't think so.
This is your guest today. Oh, what were you going to say?
I was just saying, make sure that you join our newsletter. It's really easy to do.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Stay informed.
Yep.
Okay, so
all right.
This is your guest today, so that means it's your introduction. Take it away, Jackie.
Today is a tale of Todd and 2 Jackies. And Jackie Simmons is the founder and creator of the Teen Suicide Prevention Society. And I know she's going to talk to us a lot about how conversations are going to change mindset here today. And she did that to provide stigma-free, pure prevention programs, books, and products designed to help you easily start suicide-proofing your friends, your family, your team, and even yourself. The goal of the Teen Prevention Suicide Society is to put a buffer between them and the edge, so you never have to talk them off the ledge. Pretty crafty. It started with a simple idea that if instead of teaching people what signs to look for and ways to intervene, they are given ways to start talking about suicide in a way that didn't assume someone was, we say, at risk. Jackie now also has a book. She was a guest in the past and talked about her program and her mission, but now she has a book, and it's called Make It a Great Day. The
Cue for Jackie to hold
yours.
The book up.
Yes. Make it a great day. The choice is yours. And it is a compilation book that contains stories of heartache and stories of triumph from lots of different people. And each of those stories is designed to help you break the silence. The stories are real. raw, and sometimes come with dog turds. That should be an interesting conversation. And I want to ask her why there's an elephant on the front. So we're going to hear about that. So learn more, break the silence, have the talk from our guest today, Jackie Simmons. So welcome, Jackie. It's delightful to have you here.
Oh, it's fun to be back. I am really grateful, guys. Thank you so very much.
Yes, you're very welcome.
So tell us about the elephant.
The elephant. Oh my God. Okay. So this is the elephant for the Teen Suicide Prevention Society. And we always take suggestions for the elephant's name. And the elephants came into my world many years ago, and the elephant in the room. It's what other people can see for you, but you can't see for yourself. I had two elephants. And they came into my world, and they are a lot of fun. And so the first story in the book is, and then there were elephants. And it's the story of my two elephants. And I don't know about anybody else, but I had an elephant named Enthusiastic. And if I met you and you were enthusiastic about something in your life, my elephant wanted to play with you. And so if you made me an offer and said, hey, I'm really enthusiastic about this, why don't you come and join me? He was ready. Now, the other elephant's name was Guilt Free. And Guilt Free wore a t-shirt that had a big no on it. And Guilt Free would get up in front of this enthusiastic person and guard me. But if I couldn't say no, Guilt Free, Enthusiastic had a shirt with a big yes on it. And so I was saying yes enthusiastically. There was a problem. I was so involved in
every great visual.
So, I mean, I was saying yes to everything that everybody around me was enthusiastic about. And I was, and still am, a networking junkie.
Right.
So I was hearing about what everybody was enthusiastic about. And my plate was piled high and overflowing. And I wasn't getting my own stuff done. It got so bad. One of my friends said, Jackie, I see you everywhere at all these networking things, and you're always so happy and enthusiastic. And I actually have no clue what you do. Okay, there's a problem. Now, it got so bad. I didn't want to open my email. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was avoiding going into my office. And I think the elephants kind of noticed. I think they started to worry because there wasn't anybody for them to play with. They couldn't go out and play with anybody else's elephants because I was staying home. So,
well, that's curious that you bring that up, because here's what I know is passion. Passion is infectious, right? Mm-hmm. And you would pick up on other people's passion and get passionate about their stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the elephants solved the problem, but I didn't know it. I dragged myself into my office one morning and opened my email. And sure enough, there was another email from somebody who was enthusiastic about what they were doing. And they wanted me to come. And before I could hit send on my saying yes, here came the elephants. Only this time, Guilt Free, getting right between me and this offer, was wearing a shirt that said yes. Different question. Can I say yes to this? Guilt Free? And right on his heels came Enthusiastic with a big no on his shirt. And it was a no. I could say no enthusiastically because I couldn't say yes guilt free. I didn't have room on my plate for anything.
That's a great way to explain it. It's a great metaphor. Yeah.
And so this is the cure for shiny object syndrome. And if anybody's struggling with distraction and shiny object syndrome and they need help to focus and finish things, you can borrow my elephants, but don't let them change t-shirts.
That's a great spin, because I've always thought about the law of distraction, right? Not the law of attraction, but the law of distraction. And explaining that, I've come up with multiple, but that's a great way to do it.
Oh, well, thank you. So that's one of the stories in the book. Nice. And all of the proceeds from the book go to the Teen Suicide Prevention Society, and they help us sponsor programs. We actually sponsor a VICO. It is a community center in the Mukuru slums in Nairobi, Kenya. And we sponsor a small building that they use as a library, a safe place for kids to come before and after school. They feed them breakfast Sometimes it's the only meal these kids get. And when they get breakfast, what they found in the year we've been doing this program is that the school attendance went from barely over 20% attending to over 80% attendance from the kids in this program.
Wow.
And now we have just sponsored a night shelter because being on the streets alone in the slums at night was dangerous. To put it mildly.
That's a curious question. I do want you to tell your story, and we're here to talk about teen suicide today as well. But just in what you just said, I'm curious. Teen suicide is like an epidemic, and it is vastly rising faster than anyone thought. But my question is it's my understanding that's in the United States, but is this a global thing?
Oh, yeah. That's like, the problem with the pandemic is that it is all around the world. That's why they call it a pandemic. And this is what we were facing before COVID. We knew that we were dealing with this rising tide of suicide attempts among teenagers. And in the US, it was 3,000 attempts a day in 2019. In the Makuru slums, that number is nothing. Nothing. In other parts of the world, it is worse. That doesn't make ours any better by its own.
Yeah, I just was curious as if this was a.
Oh no, it's everywhere. They had more deaths in Sweden from suicide than they did from COVID in 2020.
Wow.
But COVID got all the news.
Right.
And
because it was political.
And the suicide rate is being driven by the consequences of COVID. I mean, when COVID first hit, we went into what I called the COVID cocoon. And what happens in a cocoon, all of the structures of the caterpillar melt down. Well, our infrastructure in the world melted down. Yeah. And so many people thought they could come out of the cocoon and go back to normal, that things could come out exactly the same way. That's like expecting a caterpillar to come out of a cocoon instead of a butterfly. Mm-hmm. It's not the purpose of a cocoon. The problem is that we didn't come out of the cocoon. Mm-hmm. And we've been in this mush longer than we have the emotional resilience to handle being mush. Mm-hmm. And that's how I ended up teaching emotional resilience mastery now. I mean, that's like, give me 3 hours of your time. I will give you 4 emotional resilience tools so that you can manage the mush, because we're still there.
Well, and resilience, that characteristic on its own is something that young people tend not to necessarily have, especially in a world today where they pretty much have, except in places like perhaps Kenya, where there's poverty in a lot of places. But here in America, most of our kids have access to at least the most needful things, right? And so resiliency isn't necessarily something that they've had to really learn to have. And what I see from my own students, Jackie, is that prior to the pandemic, a lot of our youth were looking out at global warming or climate change as being the big bad thing that was coming 12 to 20 years from now, right? And they were going to be in a position as an adult by then to really be able to handle this and solve this. But it was always far off. Then all of a sudden the pandemic hit, and that was the end of their world. And without having life experiences that gave them that resiliency, they didn't know what to do. And now they're taken away from friends and from schoolmates and teachers and routines and all that stuff. And without having resiliency, they weren't sure what life was going to hold. It was like the end of their world. It wasn't 12 or 20 years away anymore. It was right then, before they could even think about it. Caused a lot of turmoil.
It certainly caused a lot of turmoil. And there are children who thrived during this time. There are children who are thriving with being homeschooled. There are children who are thriving with having things online versus in person. So it's not a one-size-fits-all problem to solve. For some kids, this solved a problem. especially if they were already struggling with social anxiety.
Right.
So anytime
Well, Jackie,
you look at it, perspective matters.
Yeah.
It's my understanding that the prefrontal cortex of teenagers and tweens isn't fully developed yet. So, and that's where that resilience is, and that ability to distinguish right from wrong is still kind of in its cooking state.
The answer is yes, and it's always yes, and because you're right. The physical structure is not built out until they're 12, and it's not fully developed till they're 24, if we're lucky. Yeah. And I raised 3 daughters who are now closer to 40. So I could say 24 if we're lucky. And emotional resilience and emotional intelligence, these skills are not taught, and they cannot be taught. They are caught from the environment. The problem is not that kids can't develop it. The problem is that we as parents and adults can't catch it to them. We can't be contagious with it because we don't have it.
Expose them to it. Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Because parents who do have it, who are emotionally resilient, which I was not an emotionally resilient parent, whole nother story, but I know parents who are, and their kids caught emotional resilience because they were raised by emotionally resilient parents. Remember that old poster, children learn what they live. It is very, very true. And a child who is around emotionally resilient adults is an emotionally resilient child. It has nothing to do with the prefrontal cortex and everything to do with nurture
And development, right? Interesting.
Yeah, it's easier to solve than we think, guys. You don't have to fix your kids. Just get on the emotional resilience bandwagon, get some emotional intelligence skills yourself, and your kids will catch it from you. Probably the easiest thing in the world to change.
Well, I don't want to jump in ahead of Jackie, but and what your book is all about, right? Having that talk.
Well, the book is all about over 20 people who said, yes, I want to help break the silence on anything that will help stop this, because the stigma and the silence when it comes to suicide is not golden. Even though I was raised where it was. I was raised with, you don't air your dirty laundry in public.
Yeah, right.
Silence was golden on that topic. No, it's deadly. When it comes to suicide, silence is deadly. It is the unwillingness to express it when we have a suicidal thought, which is a perfectly normal thought, according to Freud. It's part of our worst case scenario problem-solving mechanism of the brain. There's nothing wrong with you if you have a suicidal thought. But if you are afraid of it, now you've got an emotional layer on it. And if you don't express it, then you do what we do, right? It's uncomfortable, it's unpleasant. We decide we're not going to think about it.
Yeah, look, the blinders.
You ever try not to think about an elephant?
Right.
What just happened, right? You got prancing pachyderms going on in your head. This is what happens with a suicidal thought when you're afraid of it. You start to struggle with trying not to think about it because you're afraid to talk about it because you don't want to be a burden. You don't want to be seen as broken. You don't want to have to go see somebody. So you've got really good reasons for not sharing it. And the more you try not to think about it, the more you're thinking about not thinking about it, which means you're actually doubling down on the thought. And we call this the negative echo chamber. And it's interesting, Todd, because you brought up the law of attraction. Here's how it works. This negative echo chamber. Your subconscious mind is the elephant in the room, by the way. That's the metaphor for the subconscious in psychology circles. It's the elephant, and the conscious an ant by comparison. Great little book, The Ant and the Elephant. So we think the conscious mind is in control, and it's not. Your subconscious mind is paying attention to everything that you talk about, everything that you think about, and it's designed to elegantly bring about what you think about. That's the law of attraction in action. The problem is when you've got a negative thought going on that you're struggling not to think about, now your subconscious mind is paying attention. Oh, is this important to you? And then it does the law of attraction dance. It starts looking for opportunities and creating opportunities for you to bring about what you're thinking about, which is why we had to put jump nets on bridges.
Yeah.
Because with a teenager with no perspective and no pause button because of that missing prefrontal cortex, all it takes is opportunity to cross subconscious plan and they're gone. They're waking up in emergency rooms saying, I have no idea what happened because they don't know what happened.
I've always been fascinated with that because I've had two really good friends commit suicide and be successful. We didn't.
Okay. Language check. Halt, please. It's not a crime. We don't commit suicide. They die by suicide.
Right. Okay.
And they're never successful at suicide. They just simply died.
They just simply died. That's a great way to put it. But I've always been fascinated with how easy it was for them to go through it, right? I mean, was it easy, or the resiliency wasn't there and they were able to just click out?
Okay, now you got two hot buttons. Here we go. I'm going to get into the first one.
Well, that's what radio is all about, Jackie. That's what we
all right, guys, I'm about to shock you. Hang on, people. Kids, teenagers, they have a name for suicide. Are you ready? Self-deleting.
Wow.
As if it is as easy as hitting the delete key on a keyboard. So from that perspective, yes, it's easy. And when you understand why people take their own lives, then it's a lot easier to understand. Here's what we've discovered in all of the research, all of the thousands of talks that we've done. Why? I get asked that question a lot. And the answer is really simple. I can tell you why you do anything. And it's the same that applies to suicide. It seems like the best idea at the time. Our job at the Teen Suicide Prevention Society is not to take suicide off the table. Because the minute you try to take something away from somebody, you ever tried to take your cell phone away from a 2-year-old?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So don't try to take it away from people, guys. You're going to get the reaction that your brain is designed for, and it's not going to end well. What you want to do is just make sure they have other options. And that's what the talk is designed to do. We want it to not be the only idea. And we certainly want it to be the least pleasant idea.
So rather than just pull the phone out of the 2-year-old's hand, you give them a wooden spoon and substitute it for that. Make a deal. So that's kind of what you're saying is kids are going to think of suicide.
It's a weapon when I was a kid.
Yeah, it's normal to think of suicide. So if you try to, like it is normal for them to fall in love or to have a crush, right? And if you try to convince them that that's not a good thing, then they're going to be even more focused on that. What you're
absolutely
saying.
And then they're going to be more afraid to talk with you about it. It will backfire on a parent, and yet it is what we were trained to do as parents.
Well, and is that because parents don't have the emotional intelligence or the resiliency to deal with those questions? So if a child were to come to a parent and say, I'm thinking about self-deleting, the parent's going to go, what? That the overreaction is going to make it really uncomfortable to have that conversation that young person really needs to have at the moment. Right?
Some parents are going to, quote, overreact, meaning the emotional side of their brain is going to be prominent. Some parents are going to underreact because the logical part of their brain is going to be prominent. And the reality is a reaction is a reaction. And if you could prevent that from ever happening in your life, would you want to?
Well, maybe not. I mean, depends. I think we all have a reaction, right?
But
I want to have the right reaction
on
the right.
Right? Do we?
Well, what I was meaning by the question was, what if you never had to face being blindsided by that conversation from your kid?
Right.
Yeah, so that you don't have to worry about which side of your brain is going to be in front on the topic of suicide, because it's not going to be that conversation. It'll be a different conversation. And it all starts of being willing to break the silence. Yeah. And so the book was a starting place. The TEDx talk was where it all came together. Because
yes, and congratulations on that. That's something that's added to your resume since we had you here on the show last as well, that you've been on the TED stage now. So
Google, all you have to do is Google Jackie Simmons and that TED talk will come up. And it is an amazing watch. It's only 14 or 15 minutes long.
Yep. A TEDx talk has to be less than 15 minutes. And so mine comes in right at 14 minutes, I think, and change. There's some prep that goes into a TEDx talk. And mine was a little different. 3 weeks before stage. My stage had been postponed because of COVID. Finally got another date, got a new coach, hated my script because they were very formulaic, and I'm not a formulaic speaker.
Yeah, I know. TED Talk, but anyway, go ahead.
I had a friend who's he was a former TEDx organizer, and I asked him to read my script, and Roger said, "Hey, Jackie, it's really good content. Not going to inspire anybody." And I'm like, "Yeah, it doesn't inspire me. Will you help me?" And God bless my organizer. She gave us permission. She gave me permission to rip apart my script 3 weeks before stage. And luckily for me, the positive prime, the mindset reset people with that wonderful vision board on steroids came into my life at exactly that time. So I was doing the mental gymnastics to prepare myself for this while I was tearing apart my script. And I'm going to give every parent in here a break because we didn't talk about it. My daughter and I did not talk about her multiple suicide attempts for many, many, many years.
Even though you knew about them, right?
Oh, yeah. Lived through them, but we just didn't talk about them. Now, here I am. I'm going to take a TEDx stage and I'm going to talk about them. And Roger says, "You're going to have to tell the story." And I'm like, "I did. It's right here. I was a middle-class, normal, stable American family. And then my daughter tried to kill herself." He's like, "It deserves more than one sentence." I'm like, he told me I had to talk about the day that she first attempted. And I'm like, it was just a day. There was nothing unusual about that day until there was nothing usual about my life. And so it was just that one moment. He's like, no. So I finally just fessed up. "Roger, I don't remember. I don't remember." And he said, "Can you ask your daughter?" Well, I guess so. Yeah. So I called Stephanie and I'm like, "Hey, Stephanie, I'm doing the TEDx talk. They want me to tell the story. And honey, I don't remember." She started laughing almost hysterically. And when she calmed down, she said, "Mom, it was the shopping. It was the shopping. She was getting ready to visit her dad with their sisters for their summer trip, one state away. So teenage girls, that means shopping." Right. And Stephanie was not just in between her sisters. She was in between schools and in between clothing sizes. So the shopping became an adventure. And outfit after outfit, store after store, nothing fit her. And we came home at the end of the day with nothing except an attitude. She walked straight upstairs to the bathroom, or stormed straight upstairs to the bathroom. And I collapsed on the sofa, grateful to be off my feet, peace and quiet, out of the car. If you've ever been trapped in a car with a grumpy teenager, out of the car is a good thing. Right. And then, "Mom, I think I need help." And my eyes were drawn to Stephanie's left arm. Blood was dripping down her fingers onto the wood floor. And the emotional part of my brain started screaming in terror at the sight of my bleeding, obviously suicidal child. And the rational part of my brain was flipping through the file folders, looking for the date of her last tetanus shot. It's possible to be panicky and calm at the same time.
Yeah, right.
So the wounds were not life-threatening. I just wrapped her in my arms. We applied bandages and made plans to visit the teen mental health facility the next day. And eventually we stopped crying and the mutual "I'm sorry's" were shared, and she slept. We were sleeping in the living room. I could not risk being away from her. Yeah. And between us was her note, her handwritten note promising not to harm herself while I slept. Yeah, right. Like I was going to close my eyes that night.
I bet.
Yeah. All night I stared into the darkness, listened to her breathe, grateful she was still alive. And my brain just whirled. It's like, what just happened? How did this happen? And who's to blame? It had to be somebody's fault, right? what followed was years of counseling, therapy, medications, interventions, hospitalizations, and 13 more attempts. As long as Stephanie was getting professional help, I convinced myself we didn't need to talk about it. I didn't want to. I mean,
that's big right there, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, I didn't want to know what could cause my daughter so much mental and emotional pain that she would think dying was better than living. This is a sign of a lack of emotional resiliency, guys.
Right.
Okay. I mean,
on the parents as well, right?
Oh, well, this is me. This was me as the parent, not having the ability to stay emotionally present, even in the face of my daughter. And here's where parents get a break, guys. I was afraid of putting the idea back into her head.
Yeah.
Now, you'd think after 14 attempts, I'd have figured out that the thought was there. But no, the power of the reticular activating system, it never crossed my mind.
Well, were you maybe somehow subconsciously thinking, if I don't think about it, she won't think about it? Because the minute I think about it, then and bring it up, then she's going to start thinking about it again. Is that?
It's the idea that if I bring it up, then I'm putting the idea back in her head. Yeah. Now, what we know is it's not possible to put a thought back in somebody's head. If there's nothing there for it to hook to, teenagers, it all just slides right off of them. We know that. You ever try to teach a teenager anything, that if there's nothing there that they're interested in, it just slides away. Yeah. But I didn't understand this back then. The education of the last couple of years about how the mind and the brain really work. Where does emotional resilience really come from? And the understanding that our kids can't have it because we don't. And that's why the Teen Suicide Prevention Society is not focused on teenagers. And we are not focused on at-risk anyone. We are focused on getting emotional intelligence, emotional resilience, and some really good tools like the talk that saves lives into the hands of everybody. Yeah. Because the talk itself builds emotional resiliency. I'll tell you what, instead of talking about the talk, what would you
going to say?
Yeah.
You wanted to demonstrate, and these are your 4 key questions. And please pay attention, because this is fascinating. This is the solution. This is what it's all about. So parents, don't try to have the talk with your kids, because as soon as you do, they're going to check out on you just like they do for every other talk. Okay. They might be physically present, but mentally they're gone. But how do you get a kid to talk? The invitation sounds like this. Hey, I've decided to be part of the movement to make teen suicide a thing of the past. They gave me a guide. I need to practice. Would you be willing to help me practice my talk tomorrow? Sneaky mom.
What did I just do? There's a part of the brain that's still that little 3-year-old. Oh, goody, I get to help. They don't jump up and down so much as teenagers, but still they're getting the dopamine hit. By the way, you just started building the buffer between them and an edge that they may not have even known they were near, because dopamine and suicidal thinking don't coexist really well. So here's the talk. Thank you for being willing to help me. And we'll do it with both of you, okay? Okay. It's only 4 questions. Here's the first one. Have you heard about the rise in teen suicides?
Yes.
Thank you. Question 2. Do you have a story? Do you have a friend who's tried or died?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Question 3. Have you ever thought of leaving that way?
Fleeting thoughts. I think everybody, Jackie, doesn't everybody have those fleeting thoughts, but they don't ever take action.
I have had those thoughts years ago. I had those thoughts.
Thank you. Question 4. Why stay? What are your reasons for staying?
I have grandkids.
I have potential grandkids.
What else?
There's so much to look forward to. There are so many things to still accomplish, and more challenges ahead. And I got to make tomorrow as groovy as today.
That's right.
Parents, when you're talking with your teens, this is the one place that you get to probe and you get to say, tell me more. And what else? Keep them talking about their reasons for staying, because what's happening in their brain is all of that energy that was devoted to suicide and their stories about their friends and their stories about themselves. You just grabbed all of that electricity and redirected it to building out a new neural network. It's like giving them a new file folder in the front of the file drawer of their brain. And this folder is labeled reasons for staying. So now when they have a suicidal thought, which is a naturally occurring thought, it can't get through the filter in the brain as easily because there's this file folder there labeled reasons for staying. Now, I've got two things I want to share, because parents go, but what do I do if? Here's your if. If your child has thoughts of leaving, question 3 is a yes. And when you ask question 4, what are your reasons for staying? Why stay? They say nothing. They have 0. If you get a yes for question 3 and they have 0 reasons for staying, stay with them and call 911. Don't mess with this. This is the moment you want professional intervention. You have passed the point of prevention. You call 911. They might, probably will, hate you for it. And you might save their life. Now, here's the deal. Thousands of talks. Make a guess. What percentage have had thoughts of leaving and 0 reasons for staying? Make a guess.
I would say it would be a low. I think when kids are asked that question, they begin to find reasons to stay. That's my guess. So I'm guessing those that say, yes, I've thought about it, the reasons I stay, I 0, I think that's probably a pretty low amount.
I would have to agree with Jackie. I think just by the genius of that question, to me, instills resiliency or starts to program that person to understand, hey, there are other things that I'm here for. It's not because I couldn't find anything to wear at the department store. There's so much more for me, and I'm not stuck on just that reason.
Out of all the thousands of talks that we get told about, the number of people who had thoughts of leaving and 0 reasons for staying is 0.
Oh, wow.
And here's why. People who are struggling with depression and they are struggling with suicidal thinking are really, really good at one thing: masking. They lie. And what's so cool is that it doesn't matter. And when they lie and they make up reasons for staying, their subconscious mind is hearing them have reasons for staying. And they are building out that same little magical redirective energy file folder. And now they've got a buffer between an edge that they were determined not to let you know they were near. It is ninja mindset magic. And it works every time.
So that 4th question is the magical question, because that's going to probably be that last moment of decision or indecision, wherever they're at.
So let's drill down on that. So if you get a yes, I've had those thoughts and I have no reason for staying, that's the time to call for help.
Exactly. That's the moment of intervention. There's no messing around. There's no decision to be made. I've taken all of the decision-making out of the guide. It's very precise. The questions are always read verbatim. It's always you're practicing. You're never going to master this. You will always read it. And it's precise, neutral language. And it drives coaches crazy. So if you're a coach, I know this will drive you crazy because it's 3 closed-ended questions in a row. And coaching is usually based on open-ended questions. These are not questions you want to probe on, because what will you be doing? Building out a neural network connected with the negativity of suicidal thoughts, that constricting energy. So you don't probe. 3 very precise, closed-ended questions. You respond with only the words, thank you, nothing else. This is not easy, guys.
Yeah.
That's why we give it to you in writing. And you get it for free. It's at the Teen Suicide Prevention Society. Big button says, learn the talk. Yeah. The power of this, though, when you get to that flip question and your energy changes and their energy changes, and there's a little something happening here called mirror neurons. So when they start talking about their reasons for staying, guess what's happening in your brain? Oh, by the way, we just played this Ninja Jedi mind trick on everybody listening. Everybody listening, their brain started mirroring yours when you started talking about your reasons for staying. And when you go back and look at this video, what happened in both of your faces and your personas, your resonance shifted dramatically. The minute you started with grandkids and potential grandkids, and tomorrow's got to be groovy and it's a challenge and you love challenges. Yeah, I mean, your whole demeanor changed. Everybody listening could hear it, could see it, and their brain started doing the same dance.
Fascinating. It's too simple, Jackie.
Well, is that the end of the talk then? If as long as you get that last question and they start listing things they stay for, that's kind of the end of the conversation. You don't go back and go, so tell me.
No, hell no.
No, okay.
Sorry. But that's not even, we don't even say that. No.
Okay.
No. But every parent is trained to focus on what's wrong, and it's not your fault. It's the natural negative bias of the brain. It's our caveman common ancestor Og. We all inherited it. Okay. You know, if he wasn't focused on what was wrong, he might be curious. Not a good thing when you're a caveman. How do we know? Og walking out of his cave, shaking bush, boom, he's back in the cave. Why? Because his friend Larry got too close to a shaking bush last week and got eaten by the tiger hiding in the bush. Yeah, I mean, this is the way our brains are hardwired. So yes, your tendency is going to want to go back and probe with what's wrong. You do that and you have broken trust. You've also broken your promise, because the guide says you promise you will follow the guide verbatim. And if you're not willing to do that, we don't want you on our site.
Wow.
We're talking about saving lives. We are not talking about making you feel good. We are talking about saving lives. Now, you want to be part of the mission to make teen suicide a thing of the past. Hey, join the society. It's $27 a month. It makes us where we can feed kids in Africa, and we can continue to stand on stages here in the US. We can continue to publish books. You know, we get to do what we do because of you. But again, realize we're not messing around. Yeah. We don't believe in waiting for signs. We think that, well, all right, the Center for Disease Control and I have an issue. They have this wonderful checklist of all the warning signs of suicide in your kid or in your loved one. And there are two problems with that checklist. The first one is nobody ever goes there and reads it until after their loved one has attempted.
Right.
It is the most guilt-producing document I have ever read in my entire life, because in that document, I saw all the signs that I had missed before it. And a parent cannot see the signs. You can't see the signs. The reticular activating system in your brain filters out what doesn't match your prevailing belief system. And we are hardwired to believe our kids are okay. Yeah. So parents, don't read that document. It's not going to help you. What will help you? Accept the fact that your kid's at risk. Accept the fact that we're all at risk. We call it the suicide war with 2 A's. We're all at risk. And the more people you know who have tried and died, the more at risk you are. The top risk group is somebody who's attempted before. The second highest risk group for suicide is if you know somebody who died by suicide. And I have stood on stages and called out celebrities. I think if you are a celebrity, you do not have the right to take your own life. You do not, because the minute you do, you give tacit permission for everybody who follows you to do the same thing. So if you're a celebrity, you either step up and get the help you need or step out of the limelight. I am really pissed because I think it's unconscionable.
Yeah. So how often do you have this conversation? Is this a one-time conversation with each of your children? Or
you have it as a one-time conversation because you're practicing the guide. Now you continue to tell them you need more practice. Do they have a friend you can practice with? Do they want to help suicide-proof their friends? The minute you say, do you have a friend I could practice with? Your teen's going to be like that 2-year-old. No, give me the script. I want to do it. You can't do it with my friend. That's my job. Ninja mindset. I ran a daycare. What can I say? I learned a few things about how the brain works from 3-year-olds. So you just have the talk with more people and you let them watch what you're doing, because kids model what we do, not what we say. The minute you try to tell them something, they will check out. The minute you show them what you're doing, like if you make a vegetable that's, no, you can't have this, it's just for mom and dad. What are they going to do? Want the vegetable? Yeah.
Right.
It's just the way the brain works, guys. So work with the brain the way the brain really works. Oh, and we've got another tool. It gets more fun. They're like, I got something else I want to do. It's from the Teen Suicide Prevention Society. It's a little thing called the Why Not Workbook. Would you do that with me? So we've got the next level.
Okay.
And then we've got the next level. And then we've got card games that build emotional intelligence and emotional resilience, just playing cards. If they play for 5 to 15 minutes with you, that's gold with a teenager anyway. It will start changing the brain, and the card game does the heavy lifting. So we've made it as easy as we can possibly make it for you to help your kids catch emotional resilience by building yours while you play with them.
Fascinating.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for doing that.
It's amazing. I know. And it's so simple, right? It's that simple. And
it really is that simple if you understand how the human brain really works. Right. And I had spent decades learning as a stress management consultant how the brain really works, because I needed to cure myself of depression.
Right.
Western medicine doesn't have a cure, and neither did Eastern medicine. They don't talk in those terms. And that's what sent me on this journey. And we have actually got a screening for a free and anonymous screening from a mental health provider who partnered with us. And it's available for, you'll like this, emotionalelephants.com. Emotionalelephants.com. This is where you get the assessment.
Your other website is
Teen Suicide Prevention Society.com.
Right. And that's where you can go and find those, or it's in the book. You might want to hold the book up again.
The elephant. We love the elephant.
One of my favorite sayings, make it a great day, because it's all about choice. And Jackie put it on a book.
The choice is yours. And it is about choice. And it's about people understanding that they always have a choice. And once people understand that they could choose to take their own lives tomorrow, that leaves them available to live today.
Right. Fascinating.
And I learned that from Frank King. He is a comedian who makes his living making people laugh about suicide, because that's the only way he stays alive.
Yeah. Well, Jackie, what I love about your work is that yes, it is simple. This conversation, this talk script is very simple, but my hope is that it opens up for more conversation, not necessarily about suicide, but about everything else. Because when you build that trust in a child that says, I guess mom's not going to react when she knows that I've thought about this or whatever. Now you have really built trust so that you can talk about other things that are important to your children as well, whether they're being bullied at school or whether they're failing a class or whether they're just unhappy with, whatever. That's the important conversations that we continue to have built on the foundation of the trust from this first one, right?
For my daughter, the pain of not fitting into any clothes that day was just more proof that she didn't fit in anywhere, because that's how her brain interpreted it. We don't know what's happening in their heads, but we are finding ways to help them share what's happening inside their heads with us.
Yeah, and you're blazing a trail. Oh my goodness, ladies, we are out of time. Thank you so much, Jackie, for coming on the show again. And now I'm faced with, there is so much more to talk about. The other Jackie Bailey, we're going to have Jackie Simmons back on the show, because there's still more stuff to talk about.
I know.
Crazy. Sounds good to me.
Thank you so much for showing up as you and sharing with us your simple tools. And what a great book. Hold the book up again. It's a great cover. Got some great stories in it. And you will find those 4 questions in this book.
And they can find that on your website, on both those sites, and on Amazon, right?
Yep, absolutely. Easy to find.
Cool. Jackie, any takeaways? You have fun today? Oh, wait, I forgot to ask Jackie. Jackie, did you have a blast today?
If you're talking to me, I had a blast today. I absolutely did. You guys are a lot of fun. Thank you for playing.
Yes, thank you.
Close it out, Jackie. Anything else?
Thank you, Jackie, for all that you're doing. And let's hope that suicide numbers drop to 0, right? Let's do that.
That's about all we have time for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you had as much of a blast as we did. And check out Jackie's website. If you know of somebody, any parent can benefit from this. Pass it around. Any parent. This is the way that we put an end to it. Lastly, please, please, please make it a great day, because it is all about choice. And choose to check out Jackie's book and her website and our website, lifemasteryradio.com. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to Life Mastery with Todd Allen, the talk radio show that dives into the science of higher consciousness. Join Todd and his guests weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific Time and learn how to live a peaceful life. For more information on Todd and his guests, visit his website at www.lifemasteryradio.net. That's www.lifemasteryradio.net.